Welcome to Rebecca Sounds Reveille. I am glad to have you here. This has been brought to you by the Liberty Beacon and TLBTV. I have so much passion in helping people overcome trauma, and I've had this passion for many, many years. One of the things that I'm doing is a 7 series where I talk to you about a lot of different things involving the 7 of this or the 7 of that. And I have talked to you already about the 7 traits of an abuser. But I'd like to talk to you today about the 7 signs for you to recognize if you or a loved one or a coworker is being abused. And this is really important because we tend to look at other people, but we don't necessarily always take the time to think about what's going on in our own life, and if we're really over dramatizing something or something along those lines. And so I want to talk to you about this today because this is really important. We are seeing so much in the rise of media coverage on domestic violence incidents, but and they're very violent, that has been coming across the media waves in recent times. But if you talk about domestic violence, we've got to really start from the very beginning. And this has been since the 2nd generation of mankind, when Cain killed his brother Abel. So for those of you who are familiar with that story, yes, it is from a historical book, the Bible. And for those of you who are not, and you are not familiar with the story of Cain and Abel, you can go to the Bible and look up the book of Genesis and see chapter 4, I believe it is, 7, yeah, chapter 4, verse 8. And, you know, it's really interesting because in domestic violence, we tend to think of it as being, actually there's few connotations now over the last, decade or so. When you think of domestic, you're thinking in terms of here in the United States, and many know of it meaning in the home. And oftentimes we really believe that it only happens between our spouse. But domestic violence really has a much more broad term now. And the United States Department of Justice has a website that really spells out very more clear, I should say, and a number of states are incorporating all of these things. And so abuse can be committed, and it's considered domestic violence, by current or former spouse. So it can be someone that has been divorced, and or an intimate partner. And you'll often hear domestic violence kind of interchanged with what's called intimate partner abuse. And so it can be either or of those things. It can be a person who the victim shares a common child with, a person that is cohabitating with another, and or has cohabitated with a victim or spouse of an intimate partner, by a person that is similarly situated to a spouse of the victim under the domestic violence or family laws of whatever jurisdiction that they're in, or any other person against an adult or youth victim who is protected from that person's act under domestic violence or family laws of that jurisdiction as well. So it's really, really interesting. And it also can be a parent to a child to a parent, sibling abuse, any of those kinds of things all fall within domestic violence. And so why is this important? Because we don't need to be getting hurt. And oftentimes we generally will also think that domestic violence is only taking place when someone is physically harmed, and that is absolutely not the case. There's many forms of abuse. There's emotional abuse, mental abuse, financial abuse, elder abuse, and then physical abuse. So there's lots of different, on the scale of abuse, there's lots of different types of abuse that is happening. And I want to talk today about the types of abuse, or I should say the types of signs to recognize more of mental or emotional abuse. And really, if you think about it, and you'll hear this from many victims who will tell you, the emotional scars and the mental scars are just much more painful than the ones that are on the outside. So our body tends to heal quite rapidly. If you think about it, from a cut to a bruise, it could be a week later, a few months later, whatever the case may be, broken bones, a few years. But the scars that go on internally, that is just not the case. They last sometimes for a lifetime, and there is so much more involved mentally from the things that happen. And so this is really important to take the time to think about what is abuse, if it's happening to you, how to change it and overcome it. But first and foremost, you need to recognize it. So here's something to think about as well. In relationships, everybody has ups and downs. There's good times, there's not so good times, there is arguing, and sometimes there's throwing things, and things are said that we wish we could take back. But is that really something that falls in the lines of domestic violence? Well, let's take a look at some recognizable signs, and when you start putting them all together, it will emerge with an image of something much more, just much more sustainable in that term than what we're thinking of in just terms of a normal relationship. And so, all right, let's talk about one of them. And as we've talked about before, there are signs of someone who is a victimizer, an abuser, what their traits are. And I'm going to start this off with that again because it goes back to the person focusing on themselves. It's really all about them. And so what that means is every part of everything that they do, they have a motive behind it. Every single part of those things is really, if you peel the onion layers down, it's a fear base because they have some fear issues going on, but it goes into a lot of things. So they're focused on them, with you being left in to question things like, don't my feelings matter? Doesn't that person think about me? And really, they do, in the sense of how they can manipulate you to meet their agenda. And some of the things that they have going on is subconscious, but that doesn't matter. That doesn't make it right. Another thing is, and this is really important, because in the initial stages of a domestic violence relationship, sometimes we can think that the person is wanting to spend more time with us, or they're just really concerned maybe. But let's think of this next term on a different level and look at it the eyes of if you were hearing this from a friend. And that is that more and more, I'm finding myself alone. I'm being isolated from my friends, my family, my coworkers, things that I used to do. This is a huge, huge, huge sign to look out for, because the more isolated that you are, the more dependent you become on the validation from that person. And so it's easier to become manipulated. And other things will start happening in addition to this. So it's really very interesting to think about, but take a step back for a second and start thinking, when I was single or when I wasn't living with this person, what were the kinds of things that I was doing? Was I more outgoing and I was doing all these fun things and seeing friends and family? And now I'm either doing everything that that person wants me to do because I want them to like me, I want them to love me more, because they care about me. And the next thing you know, you have found that over time, all of the things that you enjoy doing, you don't do because you've been isolated by this person and you are now just physically around them all the time. All right, now let's keep that in mind when I say physically around them all the time, because there's more to this. As you're around that person more and more, and let's just think about this, when you're around anybody for any length of time, you can become irritated with them. Uh, they say that family that stays longer than 3 days, you're kind of at on each other's nerves, you know. But this person would begin then to belittle you. And it would start with little things and then grow over time. And this is important because you are a valuable person. You have a purpose in this world and you are important. There is no room for anybody to belittle anything that you do. I mean, of course, unless you're out there committing these egregious acts, but just belittling you that you're not good enough, if you haven't done enough, and things of that nature. This is not something that should be tolerated at all. I mean, if someone doesn't care for you the way you are, the point is you not being with them to become changed, a changed person. We should be changing because there's something that we want to make better about ourselves. Because we want to continue to grow and nurture ourselves and become a better person, whether it's spiritually, mentally, physically, whatever the case may be. But when another person is belittling you and putting you down, that does not help you move forward in a healthy direction. It just doesn't. In fact, it plays a huge negative role on your self-esteem, and that allows you to end up becoming more isolated too, more dependent on this person. If the person threatens you, this is another sign. There's a lot of different types of threats out there. This is a form of manipulation, and they can be from direct threats to indirect threats. There can be passive aggressive threats. And so what do I mean by indirect threats? Well, these threats can be on friends, family, your personal belongings, your financial dependency on that person. There's a lot to threatening nature, and you may even be thinking of some that I haven't mentioned. But this is important. If someone is threatening you, even if it's small in the beginning, it can snowball into something very, very huge. And these types of patterns that abusers have, you can find them in other types of relationships that they've had by asking questions. So if you're not in a relationship with someone, you can begin to ask questions like, what kind of relationship did you have with your last your partner? What happened? What transpired? What kind of things did they say? What kind of arguments did you have? Why did you end the relationship with a person, or did they end it with you? These are signs that you want to pay very, very, very close attention to, because that is going to tell you basically what their personality traits are that's going to carry over to you. So far, we have talked about them focusing on themselves, you being isolated from your friends, family, coworkers, being belittled, threatening behavior from the other person. Now let's talk about something that gets even more creepy, and that is the word stalking. Let me tell you, when you have been isolated from an abuser, they're going to want to know everything about what you're doing with your time when they're not around you. So, for example, if you're at work and they begin to start feeling jealous or needing more control, which is one of the other signs that they become very, very controlling. And this really is the crux of what's happening. But if you're feeling that your lifestyle, the things that you do are being controlled by the other person because it upsets them or it makes them sad, angry, name the emotion. If it's changing what you do to please them, you're being controlled. So, and of course, there are times that we do this because we want to please the other person. And oftentimes in relationships, we are very giving because we want the relationship to work and we want to make ourselves give 110% to the relationship. But this is really kind of all inclusive of these other recognizable signs, because if you're being threatened to change what you do, you're being belittled to change what you do, all of this, just start thinking of this as all encompassing and not just individual items of recognition. Okay, so if they're wanting to know where you're at, they may follow you. They may turn the tracker, the locator, on your phone so that they can find where you've been. And one of the things about this is they may want to try and catch you in a lie, because they will further manipulate you if there is any type of variance from what they can see, whether it's true or not. Say, for example, there was some internet glitch and the locator didn't track everything and it just showed you at one particular location for 3 hours, and really you weren't there for 3 hours. But these will be sources of contention, and it may not always come out at what they know right when they know it. It can take time because they're gaining ammunition to utilize against you to further manipulate you. And not only do they want to know about your whereabouts, even if you're at home, you've done nothing. Well, what did you do? Who did you talk to? Did you talk to the neighbors? Did you talk to your family? What was said? There's a huge fear about what is being said because they want to ensure that they're not being caught controlling you. And one of these things, in addition to all this, is blaming you for everything. They won't take responsibility for their actions within the relationship. And so what ends up happening is if they are held accountable, then your friends and family are going to know about their behavior and they're going to deny it. They do not want you talking. They don't want any outward signs that anything is wrong. They want it to appear like everything is great at home. They're angry. They want to be in control. They're manipulating you. And this is really important, though, to understand that stalking and this really intense need to know everything that you're saying and doing is not behavior that is healthy. And the emotional or mental position that they are in when they're trying to find these things out really go back again to just having massive power over you. And so those are really the 7 recognizable, and there's more. There is more. But those are the 7 recognizable signs that I wanted to talk to you about today. Be aware of them. And if they are happening to you, it's time to realize, even if you already have, how important you are, and make the steps necessary to change that so that you are in a healthy relationship or out of a toxic one. This is for your life. or those around you. And believe it or not, oftentimes domestic violence, it is a secret until something major happens. It is a secret, a thing that goes on within homes. And oftentimes friends and family, supposedly, by your knowledge, don't know anything that's going on. But people who know you, who've known you for a long time, they're going to know that there's something going on. Something just ain't right. And the support of your friends and family and those who want to see you succeeding and having a really healthy and happy life are the ones that you need to talk to and get the support system in place. Now, I want to say something about this also, because once you've been isolated from friends and family, if you decided that you were going to make a break from a relationship, you can't be toxic anymore, and you're going to leave and just go to one of your friends and family houses to stay or transition into a safer place or whatever the case may be, you need to know that the person who is your abuser already is aware of who those people are and would be going back to try and make things work or make things appear like everything's great. And the behavior can really escalate at that point. So if you are in a toxic relationship, you're realizing that you're a victim, you're being abused, and it's time to make a change, you really need to make a plan on how you want to leave, your exit strategy from that house in a safe manner. And if you have children that are involved, this is even more important. There are many resources out there. One that I want to talk to you about right now that's very important, because if you have been in the cycle of violence, this domestic violence where everything's great for a while, then things are starting to heat up and you're starting to see all of these signs, and then there's an explosive phase where the physical abuse has started or it's escalating and you're going through this cycle over and over again and you're ready to go. But one of the things is you have been held hostage financially where you cannot leave due to that. There are state resources available to you through the Victims Compensation Board, and each state has one, and some states offer up to $35,000 to help you get out of that environment and for the safety of yourself and children and others around you. Pay attention to what's going on in your world, and do not dismiss the things that instinctively the bells and whistles are telling you this is wrong, this isn't right, I'm not being treated fairly, justly, this person is making me feel tense all the time, I don't feel good about myself anymore, I'm not going anywhere. These are crucial signs that things could get worse, they could become more violent, mentally, emotionally, physically, and that something needs to get done. There's lots of resources out there, from counseling to actually having an exit strategy and going to a safe house and then getting away from the person. But everything that you do, you need to really think through and make sure that you have a good support system in place for whatever decision that you make. And it can be through a victim advocate at your local the county court's office usually will have a victims advocate available, or at least within the area that they can refer you to that can help you with all of these. And of course, I'm here to help as well. If you have questions, comments, you need to know what to do, you have resources that you know are out there, but you don't know where to turn, I would be more than happy to share them with you. And if you'd like to make it so that those who respond to help with victims in your area, whether it's law enforcement, nurses, psychologists, whatever the case, I've written a book on this, and I've created a program that is very, very successful. It has made a difference in many people's lives, and it has really helped with first responders in helping handle the situations and reducing them. You can get a copy of that book on Amazon. It's called Vote: Victims Overcoming Traumatic Events. Please get a copy of that. It will not only help law enforcement, first responders, but it can help someone change their relationships with themselves and with those around them. I want to thank you for watching today. This episode has been brought to you by the Liberty Beacon and TLBTV. I'm Rebecca, and I am here to help you. Please feel free to give me an email, contact me however you get, Facebook, doesn't matter. Contact me. I'd be more than happy to help you. Anyway, big hugs to you. Thanks for watching.